One of the things you find as a researcher is you're coming up with questions as well as answers all the time. I'm Christine McCourt. I'm Professor of Maternal and Child Health, and I lead the Centre for Maternal and Child Health Research. If you think back in time in Britain, women had their babies in their homes or in a maternity home, and those who had medical complications, really quite small numbers of women gave birth in hospital. In the 1970s, there was a report that was published, advocated that all women should have their babies in hospital. The statistical analysis was flawed. As the proportion of home births had declined, more and more of the women who were actually giving up birth at home were unattended births. So they didn't have antenatal care, they didn't have a midwife in attendance. They were people with particular kinds of problems who were giving birth outside the system. When Professor McFarlane, who's my senior colleague at City, reanalysed the statistics and with a careful analysis to look at who actually had a midwife-attended birth, who had actually had NHS maternity care, if you like, then the statistics looked very different. This reanalysis and re-understanding of the statistics really underpinned a change in policy. And it was also fueled by women's organisations' concerns about the quality of people's experience in hospital, which had declined in some ways. If we look at Britain, we've got two whole generations of people who were told the only really safe place to have your baby is in hospital. The evidence shows that that isn't the case. Alison McFarlane and myself and colleagues from the Royal Colleges, University of Oxford, King's, did a very large study that was commissioned by the Department of Health. And that study looked at the safety and quality of care in different birth settings. The study found that birth in midwifery units was particularly safe and was optimal in many ways. It was the safest form of care. NICE guidelines were updated to advise and encourage professionals to give full information about the evidence and really encourage women and their partners and families to think about where they wanted to have their baby and to make a more personalised choice, and to really encourage them to think about having their baby in a midwifery unit. That's a big challenge for people. It's not what we've been led to believe for a whole generation. It's hard for people to understand, it's difficult for the public, and it's difficult for professionals. So a lot of work is needed to help to actually make that change in practice. The focus of this current research is how we learn to support the health service to make those changes and ensure that choices which the basic research supports are actually working in practice. Trying to bring care back to a more personalised form of care, to redevelop and establish midwife-led care, which historically was so important, to improve choice and control in services. My colleague Lucia Rocca Iheanacho was doing her PhD at the time. She was trying to focus on how these midwifery units are achieving these excellent outcomes. What is it that makes them really, really safe and also provides really good quality experiences both for the professionals and for the families that use them, so that we can learn what the essential ingredients are and make sure that this is prioritised and that it's kept going. Another area is the issue of equity of access. Why Black and South Asian women, who currently in the UK have significantly worse maternity outcomes, are clearly underrepresented in take-up of these kind of units. How can services effectively address those problems? What is needed to ensure that everybody has equal access? Even with universal NHS system that we have, there is still some inequity of access to the optimal forms of care. We've got the midwifery unit standards document that's been very widely distributed. The kind of changes that we're looking at are very, very complex. It can take a long time for things to filter through. It is a slow process, but yeah, we're seeing these fantastic changes in countries that haven't had these kind of services before.